Sergeant Daniel Cross moved quietly through the dimly lit corridors of the orbiting human military station. It was late, almost the middle of the night according to human time, and the rest of the station was asleep or in low activity mode. For Daniel, this was the perfect time to maintain his gear. Every weapon, every piece of equipment had to be spotless. He had learned long ago that a soldier's life often depended on the smallest details, and he treated each task with the same discipline he applied on the battlefield. He had just finished checking his rifle when the station's intercom buzzed softly. Daniel ignored it. He was off duty, and the only interruptions he expected were alarms, but the buzz persisted, and when he glanced up, a soft chime indicated the door to his small quarters had opened. That was impossible. The station had strict security protocols. Anyone entering another person's quarters without clearance would trigger alarms. And worse, humans had a reputation for being unpredictable when it came to intrusion. Daniel reached for his sidearm instinctively, his fingers brushing the cool metal. Stepping into the doorway was a figure unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. She was tall, elegant, and moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Her skin shimmered faintly under the artificial lights, and her eyes, large and violet, looked at him with a mixture of surprise and hesitation. Daniel froze, assessing the situation. There was no immediate threat in her posture. She didn't draw a weapon. She didn't step forward aggressively. But her presence here, in a human soldier's room, was a serious breach of protocol. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said calmly, his voice steady even as his heart raced. The figure tilted her head, studying him. I apologize," she said, her voice melodic but slightly accented in a way Daniel couldn't immediately identify. This is not where I intended to go." Daniel relaxed slightly, but he didn't lower his weapon. Humans had a saying, never trust a being until you fully understand their intent. He nodded toward the room's interior. "You need to come in fully, or stay where you are. Either way, I need to know who you are and why you are here." The figure hesitated, then stepped inside carefully, as if the floor itself were fragile. Daniel noticed her clothing. It was delicate, silk-like, and clearly ceremonial. No armor, no weapon, just elegance. She moved in a way that suggested royalty or someone of very high status. "I am Elira of the Veshtari Dominion," she said softly. "I was separated from my escort." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. The Veshtari Dominion was known across multiple star systems. Their citizens were considered highly advanced, polite, and according to human intelligence, sometimes dismissive or even condescending toward humans. He had studied the reports carefully. Humans were regarded as primitive, violent, and unpredictable, but also surprisingly persistent. That was the official report. The reality, he knew, was more nuanced. "Elira, then," Daniel said, keeping his voice neutral. "You are far from your designated area." "This is a restricted human quarters. You shouldn't be here." "I know," she said, her hands folded carefully in front of her. "It was a mistake." I cannot explain fully. Please, do not think ill of me. I am lost." Daniel nodded slowly. Protocol dictated caution, even with unarmed guests. "You are lucky you entered my room," he said.
Others might not have reacted as calmly. Illyra's eyes widened. "Others?" she whispered.
"Are humans violent?" Daniel chuckled softly, though the sound was dry. "Sometimes, not always. But anyone walking into someone else's room without warning would be taking a risk anywhere in the galaxy. Humans just handle it differently than you might expect." She studied him carefully, as if trying to read a book written in a language she didn't know. "You are not afraid?" she asked, Daniel shook his head. I have reasons to be cautious, but fear doesn't help in situations like this. It only slows you down. She blinked slowly. You are remarkable.
Daniel didn't respond. That word, remarkable, could mean many things.
He preferred action to words. We need to get you back to your escort, he said instead. The station isn't safe for a visitor wandering alone.
I don't know where they are, she admitted. And there is something happening elsewhere on the station.
Alarms? I heard them. Alarms at this hour could mean a lot of things. Technical malfunction, sabotage, or something worse. Either way, he knew he couldn't leave her wandering alone. Stay close, he ordered. She nodded, moving carefully behind him as he led her through the corridors. Daniel's movements were precise, almost machine-like, but Illyra matched him step for step, despite her unfamiliarity with the environment. She seemed surprisingly adaptable, noting the safety doors, emergency lights, and pressure bulkheads instinctively. They turned a corner, and the red warning lights of the station's security system flashed across their faces. Daniel held up a hand. Yeah, we need to move carefully. Something is happening in the East Wing. Security teams are already responding, but it might not be enough. Illyra's eyes widened again, and for the first time, she looked genuinely concerned. Danger, she whispered.
Daniel shook his head. Not yet.
But it could be. Follow me and stay quiet. Don't draw attention. As they advanced, Daniel explained in clipped sentences what she needed to know. Which doors were secure, which airlocks could be sealed manually, and how to use the emergency intercom. She absorbed the instructions quickly, surprising him. It was not just her grace or composure. It was intelligence and focus. Humans are underestimated, Daniel said quietly as they paused behind a reinforced bulkhead. Everyone thinks we are weak or slow. They are wrong. We adapt. We survive. And we sometimes fight harder than expected. Illyra looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting both awe and disbelief. Your confidence, it is unlike anything I was taught. I was told humans were primitive, aggressive, reckless. Some are, Daniel admitted. But most of us are careful, cautious, calculating. We fight when necessary, not for glory. Illyra's expression softened slightly, a mixture of understanding and wonder. You are different from what I expected. I am learning. Daniel didn't respond. He wasn't in the business of praise. Actions mattered more than words. And right now, action was required. The alarm system blared, signaling that the East Wing had reported a breach. Daniel checked his comm unit. A minor security breach. Unknown assailants entering restricted areas. Standard protocol: intercept, contain, and protect any civilians or high-value personnel. He guided Illyra toward a secure junction. We'll take this route. It's longer, but safer, and it avoids the immediate danger. She followed without hesitation, adjusting her movements to fit the narrow human corridor. She stumbled once, and he caught her elbow gently but firmly. Careful, he said. Thank you, she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Daniel grunted, focusing on the path ahead.
Focus on moving. That's thanks enough.
They rounded a corner and heard distant sounds, metal clanging, voices shouting in alarm, and the occasional explosion from some automated system responding to the breach. Daniel's senses heightened. He could feel the tension in the air, the rhythm of danger approaching. He counted steps, measured distance, calculated reaction time. Illyra noticed, but did not speak. She watched him, the way one might watch a predator, but not in fear. In awe. She had seen rulers, generals, and warriors in her life, but none moved with this combination of calm and lethal precision. The corridor ended at an intersection where the east wing met the central command hub. Daniel crouched instinctively behind a bulkhead. We wait for a moment. Assess, he said. Illyra mirrored him, unsure how to position herself, but following every instruction. The red lights flickered, casting long shadows along the walls. Then movement. Figures approaching from the breach, carrying devices that looked like weapons but moved strangely, their shapes unfamiliar. Daniel counted silently. 4 of them, humanoid but alien, probably mercenaries hired for sabotage. He glanced at Illyra. Stay behind me.
No sudden moves. If we engage, follow my lead.
She nodded, her expression serious, her hands folded in front of her. She trusted him, though she did not fully understand why. And in that trust, Daniel noticed something remarkable. She did not panic. Not once, even as alarms screamed around them, even as danger crept closer. The first assailant rounded the corner. Daniel reacted, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with controlled efficiency. He used the wall for cover, aimed, and incapacitated the threat silently but effectively. The next one followed, and Daniel's movements were precise, economical, and devastating. Illyra watched, her breath caught. These humans were not fragile, not at all. They were disciplined, unpredictable, and terrifying when necessary. The corridor was silent again. Daniel exhaled slowly, wiped his hands on his uniform, and looked at Illyra. We need to move. Quickly!
Others may come.
She nodded.
I
understand. Lead the way. And together they stepped further into the unknown corridors of the station. 1 human soldier and 1 alien princess, united by circumstance, and the quiet realization that humanity was far more than it seemed. The corridors of the station were a labyrinth, dimly lit, and filled with shadows that shifted with every flicker of the emergency lights. Daniel moved with a soldier's precision, taking each step deliberately, ears straining for any sound of movement that did not belong. Illyra followed closely, her eyes wide, absorbing every detail. The station to her was a world of cold metal and strict order, unlike the smooth, soft surfaces she was accustomed to in her palace. This way, Daniel whispered, leading her down a narrow maintenance shaft. It's longer, but safer. Automated doors here respond to pressure sensors. They will slow anyone following us. Illyra nodded, though she still struggled with the way humans moved, efficient, economical, always ready to react. She kept her steps quiet, trying to mirror Daniel's movements as best as she could. They reached a junction and paused. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly from the east wing. Daniel crouched low, pressing himself against the wall, signaling for Illyra to do the same. She obeyed instinctively, noting the calm control in every motion he made. Even now, in a situation that would terrify most beings, Daniel remained composed, calculating, prepared. They are looking for someone, Daniel murmured. Probably not me. They know there's a human here, but not all of us. Follow my lead. Do exactly what I do. The first figure appeared around the corner, moving with mechanical precision. Daniel's hand shot forward, grabbing the intruder by the arm, twisting, and sending the alien stumbling into the wall. He didn't speak, didn't hesitate. The second intruder followed, unaware. With a swift motion, Daniel used the corridor's narrowness to his advantage, tripping the figure and pinning it silently. Illyra's eyes widened. She had never seen a soldier move like this. Humans, she realized, were not just strong. They were cunning, calculating, and terrifying in their efficiency. The legends she had heard in her world about humans being reckless were misleading. Daniel was proof that humans could be more dangerous than anyone anticipated, not through brute force, but through focus and discipline. They moved again, deeper into the station. The alarms continued to wail, but Daniel ignored them. We need to reach the central hub. From there, we can access the station's security systems. We can see where the attackers are and where the civilians are trapped. Illyra followed, her hands clenched nervously. Are humans always like this? She asked softly.
Always so prepared? Daniel shook his head slightly. Some are, some aren't.
But most of us survive. That's what matters. Planning, focus, discipline. It's not about showing off. It's about staying alive and protecting those who can't protect themselves. She considered his words carefully. Your world, it is different from mine. I thought humans were dangerous, but reckless. Not disciplined. Like this.
They can be both, Daniel said. It depends on the situation.
Right now, we adapt. We don't panic. That is the difference. As they approached a wider corridor leading to the central hub, Daniel's communicator crackled softly. He touched it, speaking in brief, clipped sentences.
East Wing breach.
Unknown intruders. Civilians may be in danger. Coordinating containment. All units respond. Illyra leaned closer, listening. She had expected humans to be noisy, chaotic in crisis. Instead, Daniel's language was precise, almost musical in its clarity. Each word carried meaning. Every instruction accounted for outcomes and consequences. She realized again how underestimated this species was. The corridor ahead was clear for the moment. Daniel signaled for her to move, and they reached a junction that led to a security terminal. He quickly bypassed the access lock, his fingers moving over the interface with practiced skill. The screen lit up, showing the layout of the station, flashing red where breaches had occurred. There, Daniel said, pointing to a small cluster of red dots.
Civilians trapped in the East Wing near the docking bay. Intruders moving closer.
If we move fast, we can get them out before anyone is hurt.
Illyra nodded.
What will you do? Daniel's eyes hardened. What humans do best.
We improvise. We adapt.
We protect. He pulled her toward a service lift, small enough to avoid detection.
The lift hummed softly as it descended, carrying them closer to the East Wing. Illyra gripped the railing, steadying herself. Despite her fears, she trusted him completely. There was no reason to, really. She barely knew him, but his calm, measured presence inspired confidence. The lift doors opened, revealing the chaos of the East Wing. Smoke curled from a damaged panel, and the distant shouts of station personnel filled the air. Daniel led her along a side corridor, avoiding the main pathway where the intruders had gathered. They could see small groups of civilians huddled in safe zones, waiting for rescue.
Stay low, Daniel instructed. We'll guide them out quietly.
No unnecessary attention. Illyra followed, noticing how he moved, how he positioned himself to protect both her and the civilians. Every gesture was purposeful, every step calculated. He wasn't just strong, he was careful, aware of everything around him at all times. They reached the first group of civilians, mostly engineers and dock workers. Daniel knelt briefly, speaking in calm tones. Follow me. Stay close. Move quietly. Illyra helped guide a young engineer who looked frightened, reassuring him with a soft word in her melodic voice. Despite her own fear, she found herself stepping naturally into the role Daniel provided. Protector, guide, observer. The group moved through the station, weaving past intruders who were distracted by alarms and security drones. Daniel led with a mix of subtle hand signals and whispered instructions, and Illyra followed, quickly learning his methods. Together, they were more effective than any single soldier could be. At one point, a corridor junction brought them face to face with an intruder. Daniel acted instantly, placing himself between the civilian and the threat. He didn't strike with anger. He moved with precise control, neutralizing the intruder without creating unnecessary noise. Illyra watched, heart pounding, as humans' ability to balance restraint and power became terrifyingly clear. Once the civilians were safe, Daniel guided Illyra to a higher vantage point near the security hub. From here, we can see the whole East Wing. We can coordinate response and ensure no one is left behind. Illyra looked at the layout of the station on the terminal screens. Red zones indicated intruder movement. Green zones marked safe areas.
Humans, you plan so carefully, she whispered. You don't just fight, you anticipate. You control everything. Daniel glanced at her. We survive by understanding our environment.
Others rely on technology or brute force. Humans, we adapt.
That is why we are dangerous.
She stared at him, trying to process his words. This soldier, who had calmly taken her through danger, was teaching her a lesson she had never expected to learn. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Not by brute strength, not by fear, not by assumptions. The alarms continued to wail, but Daniel remained calm. He coordinated small teams of human soldiers to sweep the remaining corridors, neutralizing threats without endangering civilians. Illyra watched as humans moved through chaos, their discipline and focus making the difference between life and death. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The intruders were pushed back, confined to isolated sectors of the station, while civilians were evacuated to safe areas. Daniel remained at the center, his eyes scanning every monitor, his mind calculating every possibility. Finally, the situation stabilized. The last of the intruders had been contained, and the station's security systems had locked down the East Wing. Daniel leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath. Illyra approached, her expression thoughtful and serious. "You humans are incredible," she said softly. "I thought I knew your species. I thought we could control or underestimate you. But what I have seen, it is something else entirely." Daniel shook his head. "We are not perfect. We make mistakes. But we survive. That is what matters." Illyra studied him, her violet eyes reflecting a mixture of awe and admiration. "You are different from what I expected. Your species, you are dangerous, yes, but not reckless. You think, you plan, you endure." Daniel smiled faintly. "Endurance is not just survival. It's about protecting others, too. That is what makes us human." Iria nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She realized that this single soldier represented something far greater than any military power or political strategy: humanity's ability to adapt, endure, and protect without losing itself to fear or rage. As the station's alarms finally quieted, Daniel led Illyra back toward her designated quarters. She moved with a new understanding, a new respect for this species she had been taught to fear. And he, as always, remained calm, disciplined, and precise, aware that the challenges of the night were only the beginning. The galaxy might underestimate humans, but after tonight, Illyra knew one thing. Humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and more remarkable in ways she could barely comprehend. The station had returned to an uneasy calm, but Daniel knew better than to trust appearances. Danger never announced itself politely. Even as humans restored systems and assessed damage, reports from the security network indicated that the intruders were only the first wave. Someone, somewhere, had orchestrated the attack, and that someone would not be satisfied with a minor breach. Illyra followed Daniel as he moved through the station toward the central command hub. She had spent hours witnessing his methods, his careful planning, his unwavering focus, and she was learning quickly. Humanity, she realized, was not loud or flashy in its dominance. It did not need to intimidate to survive. Its strength lay in anticipation, strategy, and unshakable resolve. The central hub was buzzing now, a flurry of activity as human officers coordinated containment and prepared to report to the Galactic Coalition. Daniel moved among them, issuing short, precise commands. He was efficient, calm, and exacting. A single soldier in the midst of chaos, yet the hub responded to his presence as if it were second nature. Illyra watched silently, noticing how humans communicated. Words were fewer than actions, but every action carried authority. Humans trusted discipline and training over formal titles. Even she, a princess, felt the weight of respect in his presence. A senior officer approached Daniel, speaking quickly.
Sergeant, we've confirmed that the intruders were hired by the Talvex Syndicate. They intended to destabilize the station and frame the humans.
We believe the Coalition may respond harshly if they see this as negligence. Daniel nodded. Understood. Containment was successful. No civilians lost. Intruders neutralized. Now we need to ensure the Coalition sees the facts, not just the headlines. Illyra stepped forward, her voice careful but firm. Sergeant Daniel, what is the Talvex Syndicate? Daniel glanced at her, noting her posture. Curious, attentive, cautious.
They are a criminal organization. Powerful, well-funded, and politically connected across multiple systems.
They deal in sabotage, espionage, and manipulation. Their goal here was political disruption. Illyra frowned. And the Coalition? Will they blame humans? They might, Daniel admitted. They see us as unpredictable, dangerous, primitive. We survive, but they assume we are reckless.
That is why the facts matter.
Illyra absorbed this quietly. Humans were not just survivors. They were communicators, strategists, and moral actors all at once. That combination, she realized, made them far more powerful than anyone gave them credit for. Daniel turned his attention back to the hub. Screens displayed the status of the station, personnel, and the isolated intruders. Automated security systems had captured images and audio of the Talvex Syndicate operatives. Evidence was undeniable, but evidence alone was never enough. The Coalition was political, not just rational. It would judge humans not by skill or restraint, but by reputation and fear. We need a briefing, Daniel said. Clear, precise. No exaggeration, no assumptions, just facts.
A lieutenant nodded. I'll prepare the data packet and link it to the Coalition's secure channel. Illyra followed Daniel as he moved toward a quieter terminal.
You humans, you handle every situation with calculation?
Even in chaos,
You have a plan. Daniel exhaled slowly. We adapt. We survive.
that is our strength.
Others assume fear or aggression drives us, but it is not. It is awareness, preparation, and action when necessary. She watched him input commands, redirecting security feeds, controlling lockdown protocols, and communicating silently with the field teams. She realized again that humans did not rely solely on technology. They relied on judgment, observation, and timing. It was both terrifying and admirable. Minutes later, the Coalition's representative contacted the station. The holographic figure appeared, tall and formal, radiating authority. His expression was stern.
Sergeant Cross, Princess Illyra, reports indicate a security breach and the presence of unauthorized personnel.
Explain the situation. Daniel stepped forward, his posture calm, voice steady. The breach was orchestrated by the Talvex Syndicate. Their goal was to destabilize the station and frame humans. The threat has been neutralized. Civilians were protected. Evidence has been transmitted to your secure channel.
The Coalition representative's eyes narrowed. Neutralized?
And yet, the station alarms continued. Humans have a reputation for recklessness. Were there casualties? Daniel shook his head. No casualties. Our response was calculated, efficient, and protective. Human lives and alien personnel were prioritized. Intruders were contained without unnecessary risk. The representative's gaze shifted to Illyra. Princess Illyra, your assessment? Illyra stepped forward, her voice clear, confident, but respectful. I entered the station by mistake and witnessed the human response firsthand. Sergeant Daniel Cross and his team acted with precision, discipline, and care. They did not seek conflict. They adapted to a dangerous situation. They protected all personnel, human and alien alike. The threat was neutralized not by brute force alone, but by intelligence, planning, and courage. A pause followed. The holographic representative seemed to consider her words carefully. Then he spoke, his tone slightly softer.
Your perspective is valuable. Perhaps humans are, not as reckless as some assume.
We will review the evidence and adjust our response accordingly. Daniel stepped back, allowing Illyria to take the lead. He had seen coalition politics before. Evidence and testimony were more persuasive than anger or intimidation. By letting her speak, he allowed the credibility of her position and her words to influence the decision-makers. Once the hologram vanished, Daniel turned to Illyria. You did well. Your observations carry weight.
The Coalition will listen to you.
Illyria looked at him, a mixture of awe and respect in her eyes. It is different from anything I imagined. Humans, you are careful, clever, and strong, and you do not fight for glory. You fight for survival and for protecting others.
That's what matters,
Daniel said. Strength without control is useless. Discipline, judgment, and restraint, those are what make us effective. Illyria nodded slowly. I understand now. My people underestimate humans. We see only violence, or rumors, or chaos. We do not see intelligence and morality together. We have much to learn. Daniel allowed himself a faint smile.
Sometimes others' assumptions are more dangerous than any weapon.
The station continued its recovery operations, but the threat was not over. Reports indicated that while the intruders had been contained, the Talvex Syndicate had other agents across nearby systems. Daniel and the human command knew that a coordinated effort would be required to prevent further attacks. We cannot stop here, Daniel said. Containment is only the first step. We need to anticipate the Syndicate's next moves and prevent them before they happen. Illyria looked at him, curiosity mingling with determination. And you, humans, you will do this? Without waiting for orders from others? We act when necessary, Daniel said simply. Waiting can cost lives. That is the difference between surviving and being destroyed. Over the next hours, Daniel coordinated teams to reinforce critical sectors, monitor docking bays, and secure communication networks. Illyria observed every decision, every calculation. She was beginning to see the pattern. Humans did not rely solely on machines or numbers. They relied on judgment, experience, and adaptability. Later, as the station finally quieted and emergency systems were fully restored, Daniel found a moment of solitude with Illyria. They stood on a balcony overlooking the docking bays, lights from nearby ships reflecting off the metallic surfaces. You?
Humans, Illyria began, searching for words. I thought we were helping a species that could be controlled, but I see now you are not to be controlled.
You are formidable, even when no one respects you.
Daniel shrugged slightly. We survive because we have to. Others underestimate us because they see only what they want. That is their mistake. She smiled faintly. I will report this, and I will speak of you and your people accurately. Perhaps the galaxy will finally understand what humans truly are. Daniel nodded. Perhaps. Or perhaps they will remain blind. Either way, we survive, and that is enough.
Illyria studied him, realizing that survival was not just physical.
It was moral, strategic, and intellectual. Humanity's power lay not in domination, but in their capacity to endure, adapt, and protect. That night, as the station returned to its quiet hum, Illyria could not sleep. She thought of the humans she had witnessed, disciplined, clever, terrifyingly capable, and of Daniel, who had guided her through danger without fear or hesitation. She understood now that humans were not reckless, as she had been taught. They were dangerous, yes, but in a way that demanded respect, not fear. And for the first time, she wondered what the galaxy would look like if it truly recognized humanity's strength. Daniel, meanwhile, checked his gear one last time before retiring to his quarters. His mind was already planning, already anticipating the next challenge. The Talvek Syndicate might strike elsewhere, and humans would respond, not with panic, but with calculated action, discipline, and resilience. That was how they survived. That was how they endured. And Illyra, standing at the edge of the balcony, watching the stars beyond the station, realized that one mistake, one wrong door, had introduced her to a species that could change the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated. The galaxy might underestimate humans, but after tonight, she knew one truth. Humanity was not just a threat. Humanity was a force of will, intelligence, and courage that even the most advanced civilizations could not ignore. The calm of the station was deceptive. Though the alarms had quieted and the intruders were neutralized, Daniel knew the Talvek Syndicate would not give up so easily. Their reach extended far beyond this single station. Their plan had been bigger than a simple sabotage. It was designed to embarrass humanity in front of the galaxy, to make humans look reckless, incompetent, and unworthy of alliance. Daniel walked with Illyra toward the operations center. She had spent the last hours observing the human teams, impressed by their discipline and ingenuity. She understood now that humans were not just survivors. They were unpredictable, clever, and terrifyingly capable when motivated. "We need to secure evidence," Daniel said as they entered the center. "Not just for the Coalition, but for ourselves. Talvex may have other plans. If we can trace their operations, we can stop them before they strike again." Illyra nodded. "Your species. You do not react blindly. You anticipate, plan, and adapt."
It is.
Daniel shrugged. "We survive because we must. Others underestimate us because they see only rumors or stereotypes. That is their mistake." The screens in the operations center displayed the station layout, real-time security feeds, and a map of the surrounding sector. Daniel moved quickly, tapping commands to isolate communications, track intruder movements, and secure evidence of Talvex's involvement. Illyra watched him, amazed by the speed and clarity of his decisions. Humans relied not only on technology but on judgment, intuition, and experience. It was a combination she had never seen in her own people, where protocol often outweighed practicality. A soft chime indicated an incoming encrypted transmission. Daniel tapped the console, bringing up the message. The Talvek Syndicate had claimed responsibility for the earlier attack and threatened to escalate unless the Coalition agreed to their demands. "They are bold," Daniel said, reading the message.
Too bold. They assume the Coalition will fear them more than they fear humans.
They assume we will hesitate.
Illyra's eyes narrowed. "And you, humans, will not hesitate?" "Not if we can prevent harm," Daniel replied. "Hesitation can cost lives. Action, guided by knowledge and planning, saves them." He quickly analyzed the Syndicate's communication network and traced the origin of the transmission to a nearby system. "We can isolate their signals, track their operations, and disrupt their plans. But we need to act quickly. They will adapt if we give them time." Illyra looked at him, understanding dawning. Your species. You are not only strong in battle.
You are clever, strategic, and disciplined. That is why you survive where others fail."
Daniel smiled faintly. Discipline and adaptability. That is humanity's strength. The next hours were a blur of activity. Daniel coordinated teams to intercept communications, monitor docking routes, and reinforce vulnerable sectors. Illyra observed and learned, realizing that human intelligence was not just about raw data. It was about reading patterns, anticipating behavior, and acting decisively. When the first Syndicate fleet approached the sector, they were met not with reckless firepower, but with calculated strategy. Human ships moved in formation, anticipating every move, using the station's defenses as force multipliers. Daniel oversaw the operations from the command center, issuing concise commands that were executed perfectly by the fleet. Illyra watched the battle unfold on the screens. The Syndicate forces were well-equipped, aggressive, and numerous, yet humanity's response was precise. Ships blocked escape routes, automated turrets disabled weapons without destroying the vessels entirely, and boarding teams intercepted key operatives. You fight. Differently from what I imagined, Ira murmured. You do not seek to destroy everything. You control, protect, and neutralize. That is incredible.
Daniel nodded. Destruction is easy. Control is hard.
But control saves lives. The Syndicate tried to adapt, sending small strike teams toward the station. Daniel anticipated their moves, rerouting human defenses to intercept them before they could cause harm. The boarding teams neutralized intruders with minimal casualties, demonstrating discipline, skill, and restraint. Illyra began to understand fully what humanity was capable of. It was not the raw strength or the weapons that made them formidable. It was the combination of intelligence, adaptability, and morality. Humans could endure, survive, and protect, even in the face of overwhelming odds. After several tense hours, the Syndicate forces were isolated, their fleet incapacitated, without catastrophic loss. Daniel coordinated the capture of key leaders and secured all data that proved their involvement. The evidence was irrefutable. The Coalition would have to acknowledge the truth. Humans had acted decisively, efficiently, and morally under pressure. Once the battle was over, Daniel and Illyra returned to the balcony overlooking the docking bays. The station, though damaged, was fully operational, and the human teams moved with quiet efficiency to restore normal function. Illyria turned to him.
I have seen humans in battle, in crisis, and in calm. You
Remarkable. Not because of strength alone, but because of your mind, your courage, and your restraint.
My people, we have underestimated you. Daniel glanced at her, his expression calm but serious.
Underestimation is common. A galaxy sees only what it wants.
But we survive and we endure. That is enough.
She smiled faintly. More than enough.
You have changed my understanding. And perhaps the understanding of the galaxy.
Dangerous, yes, but in a way that earns respect, not fear. Daniel looked out at the stars, thinking of the countless challenges humanity had faced and would continue to face. Respect is earned through action. Fear is a byproduct.
That is how humans operate. Illyra stepped closer. I will report this. I will speak of your people accurately.
Perhaps the Coalition will finally see the truth. Perhaps humans will be recognized for what you truly are. Perhaps, Daniel said. Or perhaps some will remain blind. Either way, we survive. And that is what matters. In the days that followed, the Coalition reviewed the evidence Daniel had secured. The Talvex Syndicate was exposed, its operations dismantled, and its leaders captured. The humans' disciplined response and strategic acumen were undeniable. Reports highlighted not only their efficiency in neutralizing threats, but also their restraint in protecting civilians and alien personnel. Illyra personally presented her observations to the Coalition leaders, emphasizing the unique qualities she had witnessed. Her testimony carried weight precisely because she had entered Daniel's quarters by accident. She had seen humanity at its most capable, most disciplined, and most moral. The coalition could no longer dismiss humans as primitive or reckless. Their perception shifted subtly but irrevocably. Humans were now recognized as not only capable but essential to the balance of power and stability across the systems. Back on the station, Daniel returned to routine duties, though he remained aware that challenges would continue. Humanity did not seek conquest, but it would act decisively when threatened. It would endure, adapt, and protect. That was the essence of their strength. Illyra spent time with him, learning about human tactics, decision-making, and philosophy. She realized that the accidental encounter, her mistake in entering his quarters, had provided insight into a species the galaxy had misunderstood. Humanity was not only a force of survival, it was a force of intellect, courage, and moral clarity. As the station prepared to resume normal operations, Daniel walked through the corridors, observing his fellow soldiers. They moved with quiet confidence, disciplined, efficient, and capable. Their actions were not for glory or recognition. They acted because it was necessary, because it was right, and because that was how humans endured. Illyra watched from the balcony, reflecting on what she had learned. One accidental entrance had revealed the true nature of a species. One human soldier had demonstrated qualities that no delegation, no protocol, and no rumor could fully convey. Humanity was more than its reputation. It was intelligence, discipline, courage, and morality combined. The galaxy might continue to underestimate humans, but after these events, Illyra knew one truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were a force capable of shaping events, protecting the innocent, and challenging even the most sophisticated civilizations. And Daniel, standing quietly among his people, remained unaware of the profound impact he had had on her understanding and on the galaxy itself. His actions were simple, disciplined, and effective, yet their ripple would extend far beyond the station, beyond the coalition, and perhaps even into the history of interstellar politics. Illyra smiled faintly, a mixture of respect, admiration, and awe. She realized that the galaxy had been wrong about humans, and that perhaps the mistake of underestimating them was the most dangerous one anyone could make. As night fell over the station, Daniel prepared for rest, checking his gear one last time. The station was secure, the immediate threats neutralized, and life resumed its rhythm. But he knew that humanity's vigilance could never cease. Adaptation, discipline, and courage were continuous requirements. That was the way humans survived, and that was the way they thrived. Illyra lingered on the balcony, watching the stars beyond. She reflected on the events that had brought her here, her accidental entrance, the dangers faced, the humans' calm and decisive actions, and understood something profound. One mistake had revealed a species that could not be ignored. One human soldier had exemplified qualities that could change perceptions, influence alliances, and reshape the galaxy's understanding of strength. And in that quiet, reflective moment, she realized the truth. Humans were extraordinary, not in ways that could be measured by weapons or wealth, but in ways that mattered far more: intellect, courage, discipline, and the unyielding will to protect and endure. The galaxy might continue to underestimate them, but the humans of this station, and the soldiers like Daniel, had already proven that their influence would be felt, whether others recognized it or not. Illyra turned away from the balcony, resolved to ensure that humanity's story would be told accurately. And Daniel, as always, moved with quiet efficiency, unaware of how much he had already changed the perception of the galaxy. The stars outside twinkled with distant light, indifferent, yet full of possibility. Humanity had survived the night, humanity had endured. And humanity, as the galaxy would soon learn, was a force that could not be ignored.